Welcome everyone to our studio and our next landscape tutorial. And as with all our tutorials, this is the opportunity to clarify, revise and extend your understanding and application of what you've been studying with us, while providing our ongoing support for all of your creative endeavours. And as we were saying in our reminder email yesterday, as artists, we reinvent our experiences, sharing our revelations, our beliefs, understandings, hopes and passions. This implies an interest in making images, as opposed to finding and capturing images, while at the same time balancing the risk when photographing reference instead of their effect or action on us. Risks the creation of soulless records of something. Now, this is the flavour that came through in all of our consultations this week. It roughly encapsulates those underlying concerns. So let's look at their main topics that we covered during the week in all of our consultations, where the most referenced topic, the most commonly occurring questions were more or less around the relighting of our images, especially those made under less than ideal conditions. You've done your due diligence, you're tracking the weather. The prediction is clearing, storms, and the possibility of spectacular lighting. And so your journey takes you to this revered location, but the day becomes increasingly disappointing in terms of the lighting. It gets grayer and duller. So what do you do? Let's begin with this clear distinction in terms of relighting flat images between compositing images in camera versus compositing images in post-capture. Now, here's an 8x10 negative from my youthful youth. I'd found this location late the previous evening. I'd set up camp. My massive stepladder tripod was erected, 4 guy ropes locating its stillness into the ground. I'd set up my 8x10 camera, chosen the perspective, and then covered everything up and had an early night. Then next morning, before the sun came up, inserted a sheet of film and began a very long exposure where all of the dark recesses in the depth of this forest were fully exposed. Now, in those days, we either used beautiful handmade lens caps to control those exposures, or in this case, my lens had a self-cocking shutter. Then I waited and waited. And if you look closely, you can see highlights on different sides of these tree trunks. So as the sun came up and its crepuscular rays penetrating this forest, this tree was lit up, or that tree was lit up, and then that tree was lit up again. And I just applied a series of very short exposures to composite those highlights onto the same sheet of film. And here's the 30 by 40 inch exhibition print. Now, that's compositing in camera. The lighting is not static. The light changed quite differentially over those several hours that I created this negative. Around the same time, realizing the variability in subject matter independently of the light sources. I've shown you my early distinction between inherent tonality and imposed light, shade and shadow. Yes, we can find these moments irrespective of the lighting, but what happens when the scene lacks contrast within its inherent distribution of colour and tone? Here's another example. Just as I was 40 years earlier in the rainforest, except now with a beautiful medium format sensor. This is a simple example of stacking in post-capture, not just exposure stacking, not just focus stacking, but also movement stacking, helping us make the image rather than just find it and capture it, and thereby giving us all of the tools and opportunities to try and imbue within this representation the effect of this image on me. But it's all very well to talk about stacking multiple captures. But what do we do when we don't have such gorgeous lighting to stack in our post-processing? Then we need to invent it. For example, the curve I've applied is blended on soft light. Now, let's be really clear about this distinction. Remember, there are 3 ways of doing the same thing. We've got basic sliders. Then we have multiple sliders on splines, on grids. We can put 16 sliders on this spline. And then we have procedural blending modes. And what procedural blending modes do is liberate our tools from having to do the pick and shovel work to become a sophisticated means of controlling and distributing that effect. A soft light blending mode sits in the categories of blending modes, which darken shadows and lighten highlights to varying extents. It's an S-curve rather than an overlay straight line or hard light straight line curve in its application of intensification to our image. Now, we're looking for hints and clues from beautifully lit images that we can enhance and also apply to images that aren't so beautifully lit. That's the thesis. I turn that off and I turn that on, before and after. But also need to be sure you understand how these controls work before we then apply them to resolving our images. So first things first, let's add a curve with all of our values from the darkest to the lightest turned into middle grey. If we blend that layer on one of our contrast blending modes, it disappears because these blending modes are variously darkening values below middle grey and variously lightening values above middle grey. So the grey card sitting on top of our image, it's invisible, and our default soft light curve action applies this effect to our image. Doesn't intensify the brightest highlights. We don't clip that specularity. We don't intensify the darkest shadows. It's just a boost through those midtones. This curve is distributing the effect into our image, controlling how it's being applied. So there's a myriad of things that we can be applying to our images in the quest to relight them in our favor. Remember, we're trying to capture not the referent, not what's just in front of the lens, but how it affects us, its action upon us. Now here's an image I'd already worked on. It's called hurdles. So let's apply some interesting effects we can borrow from those images we've already looked at, whose lighting is already so advantageous. I've already heightened in various ways color differential, color variability, but it's still not speaking to me. So here I am further increasing color variability through the black channel of a CMYK color model, reducing and intensifying the amount of yellow from front to back. Turn that off and turn that on. But then what have I done here? That's our successive contrast 3D action. But hang on, I'm blending that on soft light. That's not what I normally do. No, I'm intensifying what I normally do by blending an already blended version of my image. The effects are local and subtle. What is the relighting in this instance? And let's examine where I mask these effects in this soft light blended successive contrast 3D layer. I'm painting in shadows that would be there if the lighting was what I wished for, that the weather forecast predicted but never arrived, before and after. And let's push this a little further. And this is a critical distinction. This is about pre-production versus post-production. I'm not talking about pre-production as in camera craft. I'm talking post-capture processing, pre-production versus post-production. But look at my luminosity distribution, my RGB combined histogram. No changes have been made because I set the dynamic range in my conversion of the binary data into RGB triplets. Instead, I changed both the color balance and dynamic range in our red channel, green channel, and in our blue channel. So I'm increasing the color variability between the shadows, the midtones, and the highlights, before and after. This is pre-production. I'm biasing the distribution of values in this scene before I apply our reverse overlay masking. I'm preparing my image and thereby controlling what it relights. I'm color balancing shadows, midtones, and highlights so that when I reverse them to relight and intensify those differences already established in pre-production, then I've tensioned the colorfulness in the scene, desaturating blues, saturating yellows, desaturating yellows, and reattaching highlights on and off. where I'm moderating variability in different color channels, changing intensity or decreasing purity. So there's color variability, not just between the grass and the foliage, but also between the scene and the light illuminating it. It's also late in the evening. So what if I then, not changing the color temperature, not changing the color balance of shadows, midtones, or highlights, just removing specularity, except for those areas I've spent so much time in both pre and now post-production relighting. I turn that off and I turn that on. That's feeling more like the moment and my thoughts and feelings about it. Then a luminosity blended, substituting luminosity, adjustment layer, and masking in the pool before and after. Not just color variability, tonal variability. I'm taking what is already there and pulling it apart according to my feelings on the matter. And then last but not least, using another one of our actions, our enhanced shadow presence, except now inverting it. Let's turn that on and off, and stilling the mood even more. Before and after, before and after. I call this approach the law of compounding advantages, not diminishing returns, compounding advantages. For example, when you find yourself compromised in one area, the weather forecast predicted clearing storms, and therefore the possibility of spectacular lighting. Instead, the day got duller and darker. When you take a hit in one domain, we compensate by expanding a different domain. No immaculate crepuscular rays are lighting the landscape in front of us. We then compensate by expanding, for example, colorimetric variability in our color composition. So there's pre-production in post-capture, just as in camera craft, and there's post-production in post-processing, just like there is in a normal workflow. It's in the understanding of not just the aims and the possibilities we're seeking, but in the understanding of the mechanisms inherent within our production that enables us to then play with them. Knowingly, with understanding, but whose aim is to reveal that sense of, that presence, that belonging, that understanding. The very reason I stopped and set my camera up and spent that time in that moment, turning land into landscape, something above and beyond what its geology might otherwise predict. And in all of these instances, these other questions, the stacking of variability, movement, focus, exposure, either on sheets of film or in multiple frames in our digital sensors. This duration of time, which after all is our fifth and potentially most powerful affecting composition, as we go over and over in our Understanding Pictures course, that this entire demonstration was in support of. The law of compounding advantages. I wish you all the best, as always, with your adventures in photography, especially in this extraordinary genre that we call in various ways landscape. Take care till next time. See you soon.